We're going to be replacing the tachometer cable in this truck. Well, first let's talk about the replacement tachometer cable that came in. I'm a little disappointed in it. It's supposed to meet or exceed ohm specs, but let's talk about why I'm disappointed in it. And its part number is 7320561. I'm not going to tell you where I got it from because there are plenty of places that sell that exact part number, and it is that exact part number, and it's not as good as it should be. We're going to use it, but in the future we're probably going to have to worry about sending parts back or whatever if they're not of own quality like they're supposed to be, or better yet, if you can get NOS parts, then awesome. Anyways, first thing you'll notice about this cable, and I've cut the sheath away on the old one a little bit, is that this original cable is more like a brass than nut, whereas this is a steel of sorts. Not sure exactly what it is. And the other thing you'll notice is with the sheath cut away on the cable, you notice that this is physically bigger. This whole cable casing is bigger. But with the sheath cut away, the actual steel underneath, the steel cover underneath, is as big as the whole cable on the new one, which means, first of all, that it's more heavy duty, and second of all, that all the ohm brackets will not fit correctly. And it doesn't come with new brackets. You could get brackets. They're probably going to be cheesy, and they're probably going to rust out. The brackets for this thing have probably been in the truck 30 years and they're not rusted. And they actually have like a rubber type coating on them where they go around the cable, so they don't cut into the sheath or anything like that. They're in pretty darn good shape. The other thing is, because this cable is the actual casing is smaller in diameter, where it goes through the firewall, guess what? The grommet would have space between it and the cable, letting cold air in. But commonly what happens with these cables is the cable itself doesn't break. Well, per se. It's the very tip of the cable, the drive that goes into the tachometer. If you've ever dealt with speedometer cables, tachometer cables, usually the cable fails at some point, and after years of use, and it's usually the cable is snapped inside somewhere. That's not the case with these. It's common on this unit for it to snap right where the drive goes into the back of the tach, and that's what happened to this. So commonly what you do is you unscrew them. Your tachs are usually perfectly fine. You unscrew them, and then you have to get that little piece out. Sometimes you can just flip it upside down and the broken piece will come out. And other times it's kind of jammed in there a little bit. The square drive's not really damaged, but it's just kind of stuck in there, and you have to use something like air to get it to come out or whatever. That's what I had to do. But now we're going to have to take this new cable and sheathe it. I'm going to sheathe it with this hosing. Sheathe it up with that so all the brackets will fit. And it affords it a little more protection too, but and so that where it goes to the firewall, it's not like this gaping hole around it like this for air to come in. It's sealed up tight to it. But I just thought I'd bring that up. More and more I see parts like this where they're supposed to be of own quality, they're not. You have to be replaced. When they send you replacement parts, sometimes even when they're supposed to be the ohm replacement, the actual factory replacement, yes, sometimes they do improvements or changes because they need to, but sometimes the quality of the part you get, even though it's supposed to be a factory thing, even now that's starting to happen in some cases. So let's talk about our mod that we did to the new cable to make it more like the old cable. First of all, what I mean by a mod is the fact that you can return it to its original state. So say the part was defective when you went to install it, you can still return it, because if you modify it and it's broken, then you can't, which is perfectly legitimate. But anyways, let's talk about what we did to do that to make it more like the old one. We took a piece of half-inch heater hose, and conveniently it has a little white line on it, which we took and cut along that white line so we could split it open and put it around the cable. We then made sure that it was long enough to cover the black rubber part of the cable, but not the ends, because obviously you have to be able to connect them, and plus it would flare it out more. The covering is slightly bigger than what the factory covering would be, so ideally you would find something that had a little bit thinner wall, and maybe was slightly larger hole inside or would stretch to go over the small end of the cable where the nut is, and kind of stretch over it and then go back down onto the cable. We didn't have something like that. With some research you might be able to find something, and that would be ideal. And then the next thing we did was we took a GM style grommet, PVC grommet, and put it on there for where it goes through the firewall, and that way it'll seal up. They're notorious for having all kinds of holes in them for different things, and open holes, and if you're going to use them in the winter time, you want to seal up as many of those holes as possible, so that the heating system can work, in the sense that it works well enough that it keeps enough heat in there to defrost the windows and so on and so forth. I just wanted to show you that mod, and we're probably going to try to film some of the installation, or at least what it looks like when we're finished putting it in, and show you what we came up with. But again, that's a nod mod to the new cable, so it's more like the old one, and fits more like it. This is the engine side of the tachometer cable. I'm showing this now because as we install it into the truck, you won't be able to see it, but you can see that there's a little notch in the cable itself, and we'll have to line that up with the tachometer cable adapter that's on the truck. So I just wanted to give you a look at that. As you can see, it's notched, and you have to kind of line it up and then screw it on. Okay, now we're going to attempt to show you this where the tachometer cable goes into the engine. You'll notice that little C down there. It's like a little C in the middle of the circle, and that's where you have to line up that cable end with that slot in it. So I just want to show you that, because as you're doing it, even if you had a real good camera angle, you can't, because your hand's going to be in the way of it. But that, you have to line it up with that, and then you can start screwing it in.